And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, joined with Josh and Erica. We've got a full slate of news for you guys. As always, if you want to help the program, let's start. If you want to help the program, you can subscribe to YouTube. We're live 11 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you can leave subscriptions or leave reviews for us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But Josh would like to start the show. Josh, what were you
Yeah, just a quick liturgical thing. So I felt bad because yesterday at Mass I wasn't wearing red. So today I made up for it wearing red today.
That is red. That is red.com.
And I actually showed my coworker. He's like, I wasn't red enough, so I got to get the red. So this is more red than I started with. He's like, you got to up the red game here. But it's because today truly should be Pentecost Monday. Do you know about this? There's a story. Tom, you may not know about this because, you're like 10 years old.
Because I'm ignorant?
But on the Monday after Pentecost in the year 1970, Pope Paul VI rose up early, went to his chapel to celebrate Mass. And instead of seeing the red vestments, right, there were green ones laid out for him. And he asked the master of ceremonies, what on earth are these for? This is the octave of Pentecost. Where are the red vestments? Your Holiness, replied the master of ceremonies, this is now the time throughout the year. It is green now. The octave of Pentecost is abolished. The Pope replied, green? That cannot be. Who did that? Your Holiness, you did.
Oh.
And as the story concludes, the Pope actually wept. Now, there is some dispute whether or not that story actually happened, but it's one of those stories that just doesn't ever seem to die, that the Pope himself didn't realize when he was changing over the Mass and doing everything else that he had gotten rid of the octave of Pentecost. I kind of think it should stay. I think we should have 8 days celebrating Pentecost. I wish we'd go back to that. Now, I'm not going to attack anyone or whatever, but I just thought I'm going to do my part by wearing red on this Pentecost Mondays.
I thought you were just a big Tiger Woods guy.
Right. Well, if anything, I'd be wearing red to show, solidarity with Harrison Butker, and obviously Benedictine College both have the red, but no.
Wait,
Maybe
that guy's
all of them.
Wait, but that guy's a racist, misogynistic, homophobic, anti-Semitic, knuckle dragger. I saw thrown around a few times. It's crazy.
Slow down.
Are they talking about me again? I can't remember.
Yeah, I it's gonna be nice to talk about something other than that. I'm sure it'll come up. I mean, it was the top story for 6 days in a row, which I can't remember if I've seen something that reached a level of that virality. I think it's just because everyone relates to it in some way. Like husbands, wives, young people, old people. Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
It's a thing.
But we have something that we need to highlight here before we get into more of the fun stuff. When I was reading through this, we read through a lot of bad stuff, but there's few things that really make me want to throw up. I read this to make me want to throw up. Not enough people know about what's going on here, so I'm going to hand the floor over. What is going on in Pittsburgh, and why are Catholics involved with this?
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Josh. You take it away.
No, it's just, there's an organization called the American Accountability Foundation, and they went forward with a bunch of freedom of information requests with the federal government and different agencies. And doing these requests, they would get a lot of these emails back. And sometimes, the emails are kind of boring or whatever. Sometimes it's quite explosive, and it really does reveal a lot. And these emails really showcase something very horrible that happened back in 2021. A Catholic-run facility in Pennsylvania forced migrant children to live in can only be described as deplorable conditions. And in fact, that's deplorable. I use in quotations because that's what the emails say. That members of the Department of Health and Human Services and HHS as well, Homeland Security and HHS, described it as deplorable. These are not I'm not using I think it's deplorable too, but they're the ones that are admitting that this is horrible. The facility, referred to as the Journey of Hope, operated under government contract by the Holy Family Institute. Sister Linda Yankowski, a Catholic religious sister, is member of the Congregation of the Sisters of the Holy Family of Nazareth and serves as the CEO of the Holy Family Institute. This facility, it's just you start reading the descriptions of it, and it really makes you sick to your stomach. That there's feces on the wall. At one point, one of the government workers had mentioned that she had to walk through on the floor toilet water in order to reach the kids and try to get things cleaned up. Just absolutely despicable conditions that were at this migrant facility in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's really shocking. I mean, yeah, like you said, Josh, there's lice everywhere. It was obviously during COVID, and that half the kids had COVID. There was no partitioning off. There was no medical care. The clinic refused to see one of the girls they thought was pregnant. And there were 68 kids in this facility under the age of 18. They're all minors. And yeah, you read through the emails, and she's like, the person who was working for HHS who kind of blew the whistle on this, saying like, we're in this 24 hours a day. We work 12 and a half hour shifts. There aren't enough people. And it just keeps getting forwarded and forwarded on and on. And they compare it to the facility in Donna, Texas. And you might remember that during the Trump administration, that facility in Donna, Texas was the subject of, oh my gosh, they've separated
That's
kids.
right.
They're keeping them in cages. This is horrible. And they said it's worse. This facility in Pittsburgh, run by this Catholic sister, is worse than that facility in Donna, Texas. And
Yeah, in this email, she says there is, I gotta spell it out, SHI, you know what, smeared on the walls. We have begged their admins to have a cleaning service come in, but they refuse. Say that 5-year-olds can clean themselves. Half the kids on the floor have COVID and it's spreading. They aren't sectioned off anymore. They're sharing oral thermometers. Everyone on the floor has lice. They treated them out. I mean, it absolutely boggles the mind, the treatment of the migrant children at this facility. And it's like, is this what we are as a country? Is this what we allow to have happen? And how did this happen that a government worker blew the whistle on this, to their high, people in their own agency, and it took 3.5 years later or 3 years later for us to find out because somebody made a freedom of information request? Why wasn't this brought to the attention and so that we could have had, years ago and have Congress investigate this kind of stuff? Why are we only finding out about this now? It's absolutely boggles the mind, and it's disgusting.
Right. And
well,
the
there's
response,
2 ways.
Oh, go
there's
ahead.
2. Why didn't we hear from Catholics why this is going on? And if anything, when CatholicVote was asking for information, hey, how is money being used? Is it being used properly? We were smeared and maligned as racists, xenophobes, yada, yada, yada. So, like, the polarization
and attacking the
of the
church
issue
and attacking nuns.
definitely
Remember that?
did
We
not
were
help.
attacking the nuns. They kept saying that.
The ideological lines drawn on this obviously are not helping who's the real victim of this. These kids basically trapped in this poop facility who had COVID, lice, someone was pregnant, didn't get help. And like I think the real problem, as you said, is the cover up, right? If we didn't have this out in the open so that we could actually make change, instead it was hidden for political gain is essentially what was done. And it's now just getting to the point where 3 years later, this is coming out way too late. Who knows where these kids are now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question is what's going on now? And I'm sure that's going to be part of our investigations, going forward. But the response that we got from, at the time, the DHS, this goes like all the way up to the top with Health and Human Services, and finally one of the deputy directors for children's programs with refugee resettlement, she got a response back from one of the Holy Family Institute staffers. And basically what the staffer does is they're attempting to cast blame on the whistleblowers, the ones who were actually reporting on the conditions, saying it's their fault. Basically, like, we do expect our staff to clean the children's bathrooms. The Department of Homeland Security only provides light cleaning. They don't give us masks. They don't do any physical care of children with COVID. That basically it was this sort of like it wasn't an explanation of or even a denial of the conditions that were being described. So very strange response coming out of that institute, and definitely, further investigation needs to be made on where are these kids now.
The further investigation, one, it's disappointing that this is coming from a Catholic, because Catholics should have higher standards for how we treat people and how we basically humanize the situation. This was clearly inhumane treatment of these migrants. But if you look deeper into the broader let's say, migrant industrial complex. The Free Press had a phenomenal deep dive on this. It's basically a burgeoning industry. Like, it almost feels like this is kind of becoming the next gold mine for people to make a lot of money, which is kind of reprehensible that this would become something to just jump in a gold mine, specifically from the government level of allowing something like this of this magnitude to prop up. But Erica, could you go into a little bit of what the Free Press uncovered with a lot of these NGOs?
Yeah, so this was Madeline Rowley over at Free Press. She did a fantastic job of, just going through the stats, and she's looking at this federal program, the unaccompanied children program, which is responsible for settling unaccompanied migrant minors. Oh, yeah. They're responsible for these children. So these are kids under the age of 18. Most of them are, about 71% of them are 15 to 18 years old, but that leaves almost 30% in that younger. And it's hard to imagine that there's 5-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds crossing the border unaccompanied, but the fact remains that they are there. And in fact, in 2022, which is the most recent year we have the numbers for, it's estimated that 130,000 of these children came into our country. So what Rowley did was she went in and examined 3 of the top NGOs, non-governmental organizations that have benefited from this program. And they get money from the federal government to set up these facilities to take care of these kids. And most of the children end up in foster care homes, like what we see in Pittsburgh in our story. So she looked at Global Refuge, Southwest Key Programs, and Endeavors, Inc. And they saw their combined revenue. This is amazing. It grew from $597 million in 2019, the last year of the Trump administration, to $2 billion by 2022. Billion, that's with a B. The last year for which federal disclosure are available. And the CEOs of all 3 earn more than $500,000 each in annual compensation. So they have a salary of $500,000 or more. And one of them even makes over $1 million per year. So salaries went up, their budgets went up, and yet we still have facilities like Pittsburgh happening. It's astonishing the money that goes into quote unquote caring for these children.
Well, I mean,
Right, and
again,
a lot of
I
this
would
is
just
contracted.
yeah, it's certainly contracted. I mean, to me, I always think about it like you want to make sure you pay good money to get good work. And, I would certainly don't want to have a situation in our country with an open border where we have 130,000 unaccompanied children crossing the border in a year. That's a problem that needs to get fixed. And that needs to get fixed now. And Americans think it needs to be fixed now. Unfortunately, there's no political will with the Democrats in charge of the Senate and the White House. They don't want to, they like the open border. And so until then, we have a situation where we have a lot of people coming into this country, and they need to be taken care of. And I actually don't even mind paying people to make sure that there's not a humanitarian crisis, but we can't have what's going on with the migrant facility in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And so to
Well, this
me,
is multiple levels of wrong.
There's
Like this
multiple levels of
is
wrong,
a
but it's like-
situation that should not exist, right? Like these CEOs
I
should not
agree with
even
that.
be in this business to begin with, because if the government would enforce its own laws, you would not have a $2 billion industry and CEOs making
Right.
millions of dollars off of taking care of a problem that should not exist right now. That's
I
the
agree
real
with
problem.
that. I agree with that sentiment. But like, so long as there's a problem that needs to get fixed, yeah, obviously you need to make sure somebody is taking care of it, and you want it. You want to pay. You want to make sure you get the best professionals to handle a problem if you have it. Obviously, now I'm not suggesting that we have the best, because of what we're seeing at least in Pittsburgh. It seems like we got a pretty big problem here.
Yeah, and I
and the
think
government is famously good at spending money effectively and efficiently to solve problems.
Well, and I was going to
Yeah,
say
not
the
quite
Free
so
Press
much.
report does dig into a more granular level of like, where is this going? And what Rowley uncovers is there's a little bit of eyebrow raising line items, such as Endeavor is using taxpayer funds to offer migrant children pet therapy and horticulture therapy. They conducted a research on people and plant interactions in 2021 and 2023. So a lot of this is going to very kind of strange, granular thing. Like you said, Josh, I agree. If our money's being well spent taking care of these children who are basically abandoned at the border, are is absolutely top priority, and we should be spending good money on it. But I think very few people at this point have a level of trust that it actually is being spent.
Yeah, the
on
problem is that
children.
you get the government's paying for it, and then you just throw a bunch of stuff on the tab, and no one
It goes
actually
back
examines
Right.
it until what this money's being spent for. Till
Years later.
finally, 2 years later, some congressional committee is like, "What is this about? Why did we spend that? That was dumb," and then it's gone.
Yeah, it
Yeah, that's
reminds
the
me of
problem.
the levels of, I think this is rivaling levels of fraud that we saw with the PPP loans. I don't know if you guys remember that. Like
Hmm.
people were making fake businesses and then reaping loans, free loans from the government, and driving around Ferraris. And some of those got discovered, but I think there's going to be thousands of examples that never get discovered. And it was because
Yeah.
massive amounts of money were appropriated in an emergency fund, printed out money to just go to people. And I'm sure that similar argument here, if there's people that were struggling during COVID, well, very similar. The government created a problem by shutting everything down, forcing everything to shut down, and then attempted to solve the problem that they created by handing out this money. Now, there was people that needed that money because they couldn't do anything. The government was shut down. And so, yes, we want to take care of those people, but there's obvious fraud going on here. I see this very similar. The United States government left an open border for the entirety of the Biden administration, a problem that they caused. And now, to solve the problem that they caused, they're printing out more money to throw at people that are abusing said money with horticulture treatment, whatever nonsense things. And I'd say that's even at least amount of evil. At most amount of evil are creating shelters that cannot ethically and humanely take care of children, where there's poop on the walls, where there's lice on everyone's head, and where there are pregnancies not even being taken care of. Like, and that's been covered up. So
Yeah.
I think this just speaks more now. And I want to talk about, there's an immigration bill vote coming this week, and it's about kind of that Langford compromise. I think what I've gotten so many emails about this, and I'm trying to respond to all of them, but I think people feel still shamed for wanting to have a closed border. There's a lot of, even the Pope Francis in his most recent interview with 60 Minutes, which 60 Minutes is not going to be on our side on this, but saying the immigrant needs to be welcomed. There's no reason that they need to come. And so if you want to take any scrutiny towards what's going on here in America, you're labeled a xenophobe, you're labeled anti-Christian. I can tell you what, there's nothing Christian about fraud and inhumane treatment, so we need a solution here. Now, I want Josh and Erica both to speak about this. I've seen this so much from Democrats, coming right from the press secretary, that we tried to do something about the border. Republicans shut it down. Trump told his little cronies to go shut this down. I don't think people understand how bad this bill is and how facetious that statement is, as if somehow we proposed a real solution. So this bill's coming back up. Can we speak a little bit to what, if you hear this generally, or a friend of yours or someone of goodwill is like, well, it looks like they tried and Republicans shut it down. What would you say to give them for a response?
I'm going to let Josh go first on this one.
I mean, this is absolutely hilarious. The Republican-led House passed H.R. 2 back in like May of 2023. So it's
A
been
year
well
ago.
over a year. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's right there. And what did Chuck Schumer do with it? Nothing. He didn't do anything on it. And that bill would have taken care of so many things with regards to the border. I mean, and so to me, it's like, oh, well, we don't like your solution. We like this other crummy solution, which we got a few rhinos to endorse, and therefore it's bipartisan. You know what? The Langford bill is worse than doing nothing, actually. And in fact, the better solution, if you have a choice between the Langford bill and, let me see, I don't know, changing the president this November, that's a better option.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think
You
just
know.
to refresh the viewers, like some of the stipulations of the bill, you might remember this, it would permit 150,000 illegal crossings every month, so 5,000 per day before any shutdown authority kicks in. That adds up to another 1.8 million per year. So it's not shutting down the border by any stretch of the imagination. It also would send billions of our dollars to bailing out sanctuary cities and states, but not just bailing them out so that they can, get back to serving American citizens who are living in those cities, or to legal migrants who are coming in legally through the immigration system, but it would bail them out so they can continue to give free welfare, essentially, to so they can continue to expand their social services that they're providing to illegal migrants who are being bused and shipped into their cities. So it's continuing this broken system. It's just giving it further legs. And not only that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, it essentially extends all of these policies into, I think, for 10 years. So it would tie the hands of any future administration. So if Trump is elected in November, his hands would be essentially tied in trying to, combat the border crisis effectively. So
Well, that's why
a,
this bill is not going to go
Mhm.
anywhere. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
way that you're not going to get enough votes in the Senate. You're not going to get 60 votes because that bill deserves to be filibustered. It's garbage. But again, if Democrats, that's what Democrats were hoping for with this. It's like, oh, we came up with this great plan, and now
It's a
you're
political
against
weapon.
it. So
Right.
you're
It
not
is
really
a
serious about this. It's like, yeah, no, that's not working. You left the door wide open for the last 4 years, and you're going to pretend like you suddenly care about it because you're worried about Biden losing election. Sorry, it's not working that
Right,
way. We don't
so-
buy it.
If I
Yeah.
could just give blanket advice to anyone that has this thrown at them, the bill's garbage. Everyone knows it's garbage. They're lying about it. And then number two, the president has the authority through executive action to do something about the border. He has this entire time. And so when everyone is trying to say blame Republicans on this one, you can have some easy ammo back of like, well, President Biden's been the president for how long now? Hasn't done anything about it. Has always had the power to do so. It's
Yeah.
just like the worst. It's like lazy lying. That's what just like bothers me about this. It's such a lazy, lowbrow, insulting lie to say that somehow Republicans are responsible for record numbers coming across the border. It's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah,
So,
if anyone
total
wants a little
gaslight.
more on the immigration and just a neat exchange of ideas, although some of them were dumb. I did this weekend watch the Free Press had their immigration debate a couple of weeks ago, and it's up for free now on their YouTube channel. And they had Ann Coulter and Sohrab Omri for the proposition, should the U.S. close the borders? And they were on the yes side. They had Nick Gillespie and the guy Cenk from the Young Turks. I mean, the Young Turks.
oh gosh, that
Yeah,
guy's the
he
worst.
was. It was.
That guy's the
That might have been a
hilarious.
heater.
It was
Yeah.
it was a good exchange. Sohrab Omri was amazing, I have to say. So if you want a better understanding in a sort of like entertainment vibe, where you won't get too depressed, although I did get pretty angry sometimes when Cenk was talking, and Ann Coulter was majorly disappointing. I mean, she just sat there. I'm like, come on, Ann, show the
Well,
woman.
she also
Well,
just said that she wouldn't
been on
vote.
my.
Yeah, she's on
Yeah,
the bad
she-
list.
she
She just said
was
she
not
wouldn't
good
vote
at
for. She's
debate.
like, I agree with all your ideas, Vivek, but I would not vote for you because you're Indian. He said that to his face. I was like, what are you doing, man? That's crazy.
So skip her
idiotic.
opening remarks and go straight to Sohrab, and it's a really good.
But
But I
It's a
would
good
I
if
would
we-
also say, in addition to that, you should check out. Tom did an excellent interview, Luke Cass interview with Mark Morgan. He also Mark Morgan did an Edify video for us, and so we can include those in the show notes. Those are both. I mean, I thought, Tom, your interview with Mark Morgan was outstanding, and so I can't recommend it highly enough. Everyone should go check it out. It's worth your time. Absolutely worth your time.
Josh giving me compliments is, can't get enough of that. Could we bookmark this? Can someone clip that up just for the future? Okay, great. Thank you, Josh. That was a great interview. Mark Morgan is the man. But next slated news here. So pretty shocking over the weekend. Iran's president is dead. He died in a helicopter crash. Came very suddenly. A lot of people are kind of reacting to the fallout of this. Erica, what's going on here with the Middle East after this shocking news?
Yeah, this is a shocking moment, and of course, we have an explosion of conspiracy theories about, Israel had someone on the plane and like forced it down, and the United States did it, and one of the and so
Sounds
I mean,
like
yeah,
are you
and
sure
then
about
there's the
that?
possibility. I mean, this guy was, even within Iran, he was not very popular. He barely won the last election, probably rigged it. And so was it an internal Iranian coup, blah, blah, blah. So here's the facts, what we know so far, which is very little because it was so foggy up in these mountains where the helicopter crashed that they didn't even find it till the wee hours of the morning, this morning. So this was President Ibrahim Raisi. And he and other heads of the Iranian government, including their foreign minister. So this is a big deal. They had been visiting Azerbaijan, a big ally of theirs, and they crashed Sunday and it was confirmed that all people on the helicopter were dead, including some crew members. The New York-based Center for Human Rights in Iran described his presidency as a stunning escalation of state repression and violence against peaceful dissent in Iran. So whenever you heard in the news for the last few years about the return of extreme Sharia law, the repression of women, student demonstrations being brutally stopped, that was him. He's basically the Ayatollah Khomeini's right-hand man. And he has been described as a boot on the neck of the Iranian people. Over 5,000 people were executed under his rule. So this guy was bad news, and
likely to
not a
be
lot of
replaced
grief.
by another guy who's also bad, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Amber?
probably just going to continue in that vein for Iran, the people of Iran, sadly. That
Can I
being
ask a
said-
really ignorant
Oh, go ahead.
question?
You can be ignorant. Go for it, Tom.
I saw a lot of
We
memes
expect
on
it.
Twitter about Obama. Why? Do you guys know why? Did he have some involvement with Obama?
Well, I mean, Obama's foreign policy basically was, to walk back a lot of the tough guy talk with Iran and to kind of go toward
Won't
this.
give them the money back, remember?
Yeah, giving them all their money back.
Okay,
Biden
could
gave
you guys
them back
explain that? Because I don't know if
$10 billion.
everyone understands it. I definitely don't understand it. I was young. So
Well,
what was going
because
on
of
with Iran? and
certain
Obama?
policies, certain pro-terrorism policies by the Iranian government, what I think it was the Bush administration put a freeze on, hundreds of millions of dollars that Iran had in international banks, and it froze those assets, so Iran could not access them. I mean, it was Iran's money, but we're like, you're supporting terrorism and doing horrible things. We're not going to let you have the money. And what was it? Ben Rhodes and all the people in the illustrious Obama administration's like, well, we should let Iran have their money back. They're promising to play nice. Way to go, guys.
We can trust them. Here's billions of dollars. And the same thing from the Biden administration just last year. They were like, here's $6 billion back and it'll be fine. And that was a month before the October 7th attacks from Hamas. And, regardless of who caused the crash, what's going on, the answer is this is going to be incredibly destabilizing for the Middle East, which is already so destabilized. Iran is basically running proxy wars with Hezbollah in the north of Israel. They're running proxy wars. They're a huge funder of Hamas in the south and in Gaza and the West Bank. And they also are backing the Houthis in Yemen. And that's another, terrible conflict that's going on down there. And for a regime change to happen in Iran right now, it's not even going to be a regime change. They're just going to put the next guy in who's basically the same policies or worse, like Josh said. But this is going to be terribly destabilizing in the Middle East.
Quick interjection.
It's quick.
Call me America first, but let's stop sending money to Iran. Is that
Can
why?
we refreeze the assets?
Yeah. Can we
Just
not
an
be doing
idea.
that?
It would
Just
make sense to me, but
I would love to,
Yeah.
Well, it's
Um,
not that we were sending our money to them. I just want to be
Well, no,
make sure we're clear.
the drone program was the drones that they used against Israel were from the American drone program that Biden restarted in the Middle East. So I think I would love to do a more in-depth interview. Maybe this is edified territory of the history of America basically funding every side of wars.
I would love
With
to have that
American money?
interview. All right.
Why?
Maybe we
It
get
just-
Boeing to sponsor the interview.
Yeah, geez, I'm going to need 24/7 security after that one. But it's just shocking to me how much American money is involved in all these international conflicts. For what reason? There's no reason you could give me that would justify giving money to Iran. Like, I know this is a crazy American person thought, but like, what are we doing, guys? Like, we're
Yeah, so
totally involved
early-
there.
It took about. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it just reminds me of what happened in the early 1980s, where, I'm sure it was the CIA or whoever else was involved with getting Iran and Iraq to fight a war against each other. The United States is probably like, great, spent a whole lot of money blowing the crap out of each other. I don't know why that our federal, intelligence agencies think that's such a great idea. Like, those things tend to bite you back in the behind later. I just think in general, it should just not be playing those kind of games. But
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just did it in Afghanistan too. Like, if you remember our exit, basically they're like, "Well, this is the good Taliban now. You can have the country." Like, they promised to play nice, and they're just
Well,
one
executing
thing-
people.
Look, it's one thing if the Biden administration was going to say with Afghanistan, it's like, we've been here for 20 years. This is getting dumb. We need to get out of here. Cut bait. We can't make it any better. I actually understand that. But, you should make sure you have a sensible plan for getting your guys out, getting your equipment out, getting your ammunition out.
There was
And don't
no
just
plan.
go, oh, we're leaving. Bye.
Yeah,
And leave a
there
whole
was no
bunch of
plan.
people behind and leave a bunch of our military artillery behind. So the way Biden did that was dumb. And in fact, that there's actually a credible theory to suggest that Biden's approval numbers took a dip then, right when that was going on with Afghanistan, and it never really recovered after that. Because I think Americans, Americans don't follow everything, but they got a sense of the president then with that completely stupid decision and disastrous decision.
I remember a really visible sign of that was I was at a very local, I don't even think it might have been single A or independent league baseball game in Michigan. And they left 6 open seats. Or how many people died after the exit? It was like 13, yeah. So 13 seats empty with American flags over it. And there's a moment of silence for everyone who died. And I was just like, it doesn't get more visible than that. I mean, from just an average person standpoint, whenever there's American soldiers dying like that so publicly and so needlessly, it's really hard not to point fingers at the top.
That's the kind of story that cuts through the clutter. Like, people in the Beltway, people on Twitter who discuss politics. There's different issues that, rile them up or in the latest outrage of the day or whatever. But that the botched withdrawal out of Afghanistan made a major impact on a lot of people. And they noticed it. And just likewise, like the standard of living, like how everything is it used to cost you $1 to get a burger at McDonald's. Suddenly it's $3. People notice those kind of things.
Oh, it's way more than $3
adds
now.
up.
It's crazy.
They have a special though this month. You can get a triple cheeseburger for $2.99. So, what a deal!
What is that, funded by the Biden administration?
Patty. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so everything's
They're trying their best. McDonald's election interference.
There goes Josh. He's gone. Yeah,
subsidizing triple
That's right.
cheeseburgers.
It's totally election interference. Mickey D's.
But yeah, next topic here we have, speeches are kind of hot in the streets right now. Many of you have probably listened to a college commencement speech more than you would have in past years. But Biden just addressed Morehouse College in Georgia this weekend. They're a traditionally black college. I believe they're they're considered an HBCU. Right. And it's really hard. What was the thought process here? We're going to have a white president come to a traditionally black college and tell everyone how they're a victim, how America's treated them horribly, and that it's hard to be a black man in America, coming from the leader of the country that's responsible for that. I saw people actually turned during the speech. So there's a young man who's just looking away. Watching the speech, I heard a lot of confused claps. I don't know if they had a clap sign somewhere in there, but it was not super well received just from watching it. And he was kind of all over the place. Talked a lot about race, talked a lot about racism, but also talked about Israel and Palestine. I don't know who wrote this speech, but if you guys, any quick insights on the Morehouse College speech?
I think some of the students, their reaction to Biden might have been a little bit muted because there's a big controversy with so many college students that Biden is too pro-Israel and not pro-Hamas enough. So I'm only guessing that might be what's going on. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden is an obnoxious, evil race baiter. He's the guy who in 2012 was trying to discourage blacks from voting for Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney. Like the most white Wonder Bread, nice guy. I want to hug everybody, whatever. Mitt Romney. Really? Mitt Romney is like your, Southern racist white guy, right? What?
He's a Mormon from
Utah. He's like the most boring Utah, nice guy in the world. But he's like, oh no, if you elect Mitt Romney, he said to black voters, he'll put you back in chains. Chains, as in slavery. We're going to go back to the 1860s with slavery. It's so nuclear, so vile, so obnoxious. So when people say, this guy Biden, what would be the purpose for him to speak to a historically black college in a swing state like Georgia? He's going to try to use the same kind of race baiting stuff. Just, use this kind of language and say, Republicans are pure racistly evil. And the fact is, they're even more freaked out about this than they were before, because Democrats realize they're in danger of losing black voters,
Yeah.
especially black men.
As they should.
You know, James Carville was warned about this. Like the number of black men that are really considering voting for Donald Trump is through the roof. You know, he's not going to get a majority of them, but if all he does is move the needle on the black vote significantly, there goes Georgia. He can't win Georgia then. And other states become that much harder, like Michigan, that much harder to win. So this is exactly why he's doing it. And I just, we talk about Joe Biden being kind of a dunce, an idiot, and that kind of stuff, but he is vile. He is a vile man when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Well, Josh, you didn't even mention the other big ones to me were the high-tech lynching of Justice Thomas during that hearing for him to be on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Truly just a shocking, again, like very race baiting, sensationalist. I mean, totally turned that into a circus. That was on Biden's watch. He was the head of the committee. And then poor kids are just as smart and talented as white kids was another banger. And then he also, when he was a senator, said he did not want his district to become like a jungle, I think, referring to black people taking over. So he's always been this way, right? Like this isn't like a recent, he's just really ratcheted up the race baiting.
Yeah,
I mean,
or
he's
he got
always
old
been
and
this
he got
way.
crazy. No,
I mean, he is old and crazy now, but he's always been this way. And
I think the speech, I'm just gonna
go
step
for it,
in
Erica.
real
Yeah.
quick. The speech, I think it came across to me as a campaign speech, probably written by committee of people who aren't even really sure, like who don't even trust each other. And whatever the reason I say that is that it's just such bad. It's so poorly written, but at the same time, it's not only that the committee wrote the speech and put it up in the teleprompter, but you can tell when Biden is just departing from it and starting to ad lib a little bit. And that's where he gets into he has his lines, right? He's like, I'm serious. Think about it. He says that about 6 times. He's kind of like going off about it. To me, the weird part was when he gets into the black history. We know black history is American history. So he gets this sort of like half hearted applause. They're like, okay, like we should clap because we're black. And then he's like, many of you graduates don't know me. Then he goes, and we know black men are going to help us lead the future. Black men from this class. And I'm like, what? The men? What about the women? Like, isn't this like a leftist thing? It was just a bizarre speech so it's like the committee who don't agree with each other internally and they're fighting over what Gaza means. And then you have Biden who kind of like goes off, and I can only hope he gives more speeches like this leading up to the election. That's
you know what really would have caused controversy if he would have said that women are probably going to become mothers and homemakers. That really would have blown up his chances apparently to get elected.
That bridge too far.
Right, that's a little too much. Dude, you're fine with the race baiting. You're fine with all the racial stuff, but as soon as you bring up mothers, watch out. Yeah, really bizarre speech there. But another moment that relevant to us Catholics. So Pope Francis did a 60 Minutes interview, and
before we do that, real quick, just real quick, Tom, real quick.
Yep.
Because we just got done with, as you mentioned, the speech, with Biden. I mean, I'd like to say yes. We made the funny joke about talking about moms. Go to CatholicVote.org, sign our petition in favor of, show your support for Harrison Butker. We're over at 67,000 signatures now. I want to get more than the left-wing crazies had that are calling for him to be fired. So let's do that. So go to CatholicVote.org and sign the petition.
Yes.
Most definitely. Okay, so on to Pope Francis now. He did a 60 Minutes interview in America. It was translated. The one clip that was sent out before it went live was his thoughts about American conservatives. And that one, of course, stirred up the classic controversy. But I think a lot of people are nervous for this interview because Pope Francis has kind of made clear he's not a huge fan of American Catholics. So to be doing an interview in America with a place like 60 Minutes was not, something people look forward to.
Before we go any further, I also want to say the other reason I was not excited about this is because the last time we covered a 60 Minutes interview, if you remember, it was with Tiffany Justice and the Moms for Liberty crowd, and they butchered them. They gave them no quarter. They edited it up the wazoo and made them look really bad. So not only do we have concerns about Pope Francis internally as Catholics and like where that's going, but we also have him agreeing to be on this platform that is notoriously far progressive, anti-Christian, anti-Catholic. So I just want to put that in there too. It was another cause of hesitation in our enthusiasm for this.
The interview's out now, and
It
so we
is?
have observations. People are taking away different things from this. So from your observations, Josh and Erica, what did you guys take away from this interview?
Well, a few quotes. Should we start with a few quotes? I'm going to go with a few quotes. And again,
few quotes.
this was via Spanish translator, so take from translation what you will. I did reach out to our Spanish-speaking brethren. I have not heard from them yet. But so on conservatives, he says, according to the translator, the adjective conservatives is applied to someone who clings to something and does not want to see beyond that. He called it a suicidal attitude. Because one thing is to take tradition into account, to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box.
It's just
So-
kind of interesting that the Pope would use dogmatic as in a negative context. It's worth
Yeah.
noting that. It seems kind
It's
of
upholding dogma.
kind of
is
crazy.
in the
We
job
have-
description.
our dogmas bad, bro. I thought they were actually kind of okay.
Chief truths
whatever.
of the faith and all that, Nicene Creed, dogma. Yeah, apparently. So there's
I mean,
that.
Mary was assumed into heaven. Don't be so dogmatic, bro.
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
my goodness.
I don't know. Maybe we should be sometimes.
Yeah, and the idea
Um,
that conservatives are suicidal, like that somehow the desire to conservative really just means the desire to conserve the past. And is there a bad past to conserve? Absolutely. That would be bad conservatism. But simply wanting to uphold the traditions of the church from time immemorial does not make you suicidal or looking back at the past. It's just saying that, look, yes, there was something good and true and holy in the ancient church, in the medieval church, in the pre-modern church, that we can learn from, right? That we want to be in dialogue with, as it were, to use a
Absolutely.
buzzword. And to dismiss it as suicidal is very hurtful, I think, especially given the pattern of the Francis pontificate and his treatment of
I
traditional.
don't feel very
minded
walked
Catholics.
with, or
I mean,
my
if
lived
it's what-
experience very acknowledged.
What is suicidal is for someone who is, I don't know, let's say the Pope, to be against traditions. It's like, why do we have one leader of our Catholic Church? I mean, maybe we shouldn't. And some people have been pushing for the Catholic Church to abolish the male priesthood. And why do we have to have a Pope in charge of things? And it's like, well, it's because we have the traditions of our church. That's why. Are we clinging to that, Francis? Right? Are we suicidal if we're doing that? Or is it just that, you have something in your craw, or you just don't like the conservatives in the United States? Is that what this is really about? Because that's what it feels like. I mean, like no one is suggesting that you have to do everything that has always been done before. That's not what conservatism is.
Right.
Conservatism is we should use the past as a prologue, use it as a guide. As new situations come before us, examine it in light of tradition. Like, that is not the dumbest thing. It's what everyone actually does.
It's actually
like-
one of the pillars.
I mean,
of the
it's not like
church.
you get into a car and you're like, I have no idea how to drive a car, even though I've done it tons of times before. I don't know, I guess maybe I'll turn, this way with the, it's like, no. I mean, you actually have to use the brake pedal and the gas. This is the way it is. And this is the turn signal. This is the steering wheel. This is how you do things. I mean, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, it reminded me of that the article that Jade Hendricks had in First Things a little while ago. It's like, why does Pope Francis hate me? They changed the title. Did you notice that? They changed the title to "Why does Pope Francis dislike me?" And it was a great
lame.
It was
Lame. It was such a good title.
It's first thing, we can't all be Catholic vote, man. But
It is descriptive. It would have been better to keep it the
was
way it was.
descriptive. It was descriptive. But yeah, Jade's just talking about this pattern of it seems like petulance. It seems petty comments about, seminarians who like lace on their albs, and they're, women who wear mantillas and masks, and they want to face east, and they're always looking back in the past. And
Wow.
it's just these
He
comments.
includes
It
those
does
petty
seem
things,
like this.
Erica.
Can I bring this up?
But there is.
Can I bring this up?
But
Let me bring this up.
Francis maintains not just those petty little comments, a true disdain for conservatives in the United States. It's pretty obvious, and it's not like he
Josh,
doesn't understand us. He understands us and doesn't like us. Okay, fine.
Josh, we gotta bring it up. Did you guys see in France what happened?
Yes, the Chartres pilgrimage. Did you see?
We
Are you
gotta
talking about
show
pilgrimage?
that. Yes, show the pilgrimage footage. If we could pull it up right now, nothing makes me happier than this. And I think it speaks kind of to like the frustration. If the church really wanted to meet people where they were at and go to where young people are and see what's being encouraged, in this pilgrimage in France, thousands upon thousands of people attending a traditional Latin Mass at this retreat in France. And I've thought about this. I wonder if there's a little bit more of the attraction because it is kind of from the top, a little bit discouraged. Like it feels a little bit
totally.
like a bad boy. Like, we're going back to our roots. We've discovered something secret
Rebel
in
with
the
a
Mass.
cause. Yeah.
And so I almost am kind of like, okay, I guess don't discourage it because I think it's really cool to see this kind of very grassroots uprising. But I was so inspired to see just thousands upon thousands. This crowd was just humongous. And I almost just wish that, and I know this is the problem. I wish Pope Francis would embrace, as the leader of the church, people like this, because this is clearly where the energy is. This is clearly where the momentum is. And there's such a disconnect from the kind of like intellectual or bourgeoisie in the Vatican of like the synodality talk, or a lot of their talking points are not relevant with, your average mass going Catholic, especially in America, that actually goes to Mass on Sundays. I'm not talking about the intellectuals that spout off on Twitter or the people talking in the Vatican. Like if you look at this, like this is where people are. There's no question. Look at this aerial shot. I mean, they're like ants. And to have a leader embrace that and celebrate that, I think we're not far away from that. I think the next Pope hopefully will. But I think there's room for everyone, right? Like, why do we need to just box out one group of people that are embracing a Mass that we've had since the 4th century, and that's their preferred method to worship God because it's been handed down to us by the apostles and our martyrs and everything like that. And you can still have room for the progressives as well. Like if they want to have those synod conversations, you're happy to do so. But to actively persecute one side, I think just is very hypocritical. I just have to say it's hypocritical.
Right. I mean, there's room in this church for progressives who are like, I care about social justice issues, helping the poor and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's great. That's fine. Just as long as you don't embrace gender ideology or you refuse to stand up for the unborn, go for it. As long as you're, that's fine. And there's room for conservatives and traditionalists both. Like, look, I am a strong supporter of those who want to go to Latin Mass. It's not really my thing. That's fine. Whatever. But the point is, why is this Pope so disgusted by both traditionalists and conservatives? It's kind of obnoxious. And if anything, you're right. He should be thrown a lifeline to support these people because they're showing initiative. They're bringing more people into the fold, and they're getting people excited about the Catholic faith.
They're
but
having
this
babies.
Pope just seems absolutely disgusted by it.
They're having babies. The future is this way. Anyone that has any question about it, the future is this way.
This was one of the frustrations for me with, first, I had 2 points. One, the Pope himself, he met with the Syro-Malabar Eparch, and he had this long speech or talk that he gave at that meeting about how when we're talking about the Eucharist and Eucharistic revival, which started this weekend, by the way, I got to go to the first Mass of the Elizabeth Ann Seton route. It was very cool. Very cool. But talking about Eucharistic revival, he said himself, he was like, we shouldn't be quibbling over the details of the rituals surrounding the Eucharist. We should be focused on the Eucharist itself. And I'm thinking, like we shouldn't be suppressing the Latin Mass. It's really, we should be focused on the Eucharist itself. Like we can have Syro-Malabar, we can have
Who said that, though?
The Pope did, Pope Francis in his talk to the Eparch.
Well, and his friend in Chicago, Supich, doesn't want the Eucharist to be proceeded through the city.
Yeah, we were way ahead of Chicago because we had 2 Eucharistic processions through New Haven. Yes.
Bang.
Go Archbishop.
And you guys need it.
Yeah, we do, because it was through. Well, actually, the one that I got to do Saturday night for the vigil was through the Yale campus, and all the time I'm just like, "Come, Holy Spirit, fall upon this place." I was like pulling out my Pentecostal past. But anyway, second point. This was one of my frustrations too with all of the internal criticism of Harrison Butker that we saw in the Catholic community the last week. And I have friends who are very much on like the femme Catholic end of things. The John Paul II Mulieris Dignitatem. I'm a huge fan as well of John Paul II, but they're judging Harrison Butker's commencement speech. Oh, I hear angels singing. Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, we're good. Sorry, I muted it. That was
that was awesome. It was it's like a validation of what I'm about to say.
You're gonna make a great point.
we had, but we had all these criticisms.
The angels do love what you say,
Coming
Erica.
to
I'm
yeah, and
convinced.
look, like, could Harrison have said it better? Could he have given more nuance to, okay, not every woman is called to be a sole homemaker. I mean, I myself, I work full time, I homeschool my kids, and I make the home with my husband. So, by Harrison's standards, I'm not living that life that his wife is living.
Wow.
But again, like you said, Tom, like, we can have voices like Harrison's, and we can have voices like the Femme Catholic, and we can have traditionalists, and we can have people who love the Novus Ordo passionately and want to make that reverent and holy and good. But we have to realize that the enemy is at the gates. The enemy has stormed the gates, and they're after people like Harrison, and they're after the TLMers. So that's where our energy should be going, instead of fighting each other and tearing apart everything Harrison said. Like, we need to defend his right to say what he said.
I'm yet to find someone who I've talked to that disagrees with anything he said on substance. And that's always, I'm like, the first conversation, do you disagree with anything he said on substance? The answer is always no. It's like, you could have said this better, you could have said this better. I'm like, great. Now that we're on the same page, like, The View definitely doesn't. These progressives definitely do not. The Kansas City Star definitely does not. Every major institution definitely does not. So it's like, get in the foxhole, right? Like, I understand you got your issues, but I do not want people giving nuanced conservative takes about why it could have been better. Maybe it was wrong. Those are not people I want in the foxhole.
Right.
I want people in the foxhole ready to go to bat, ready to defend here. Like, we need to understand the current moment is basically how I've always tried to end the conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Erica's saying, Tom, and I don't think it's really different from what you're saying. It's like, you can still say that could have been delivered a little bit better here or there, but I'm standing with him. I stand with Harrison Butker. That's why I'm encouraging people to sign the petition we have.
Because you agree on substance.
I do.
And Erica, I believe that's kind of into your Twilight Zone here, if we want to slide into that.
It is, actually. Yeah. So this was, as I think I've shared before, I used to be in the high academic tower of philosophy and Martha Nussbaum here. This was so once in a while I dip back into my roots, and this was a debate between Martha Nussbaum, who's a really well-known, like super well-known female philosopher out of University of Chicago right now, and she and Shadi Hamid, who's more of a libertarian thinker, they had a debate over whether human overpopulation or underpopulation will be the challenge of the future. And she starts off this clip that I have with, well, no one should be having children right now at all. And you see the guy's face just kind of like drop, and he starts in very gently saying, you are aware that we are having a fertility crisis in the developed world, and even the developing world is falling below replacement. The populations can't sustain themselves. And she's a boomer. She's probably pushing 75 at this point. And she listens very carefully to his very well-reasoned argument about, populations being important, reproduction being needed. And then she just reiterates, she's like, no one should be having children at all because overpopulation. And you look at her, she's teaching courses on Save the Baby Whales and how human cruelty to animals and the climate change. But what this brought up for me,
Awesome.
It was, and this dovetails into Harrison Butker in this way. Anthony Esolen had probably the best commentary on Harris. Of course he did, right? We all love
No surprise.
Esolen. At the Catholic thing.
Can you please come on the show?
Yeah,
Anthony Esolen is the best.
Talk. He's awesome. And he looked back at the Harrison Butker thing. He wrote a wonderful column about how and I would say this even applies to some millennials and Gen Xers who are commenting on it, that we tend to interpret and criticize based on the battles we have fought in our lives. And Harrison is a younger guy, but he goes, and this is Martha Nussbaum falls into this category so well. Anthony Esolen says, I meet all the time stuck in the mud progressive fuddy-duddies of a revolution that has come and gone and left a lot of rubble behind, with very little institutional,
Amen.
intellectual, artistic, and cultural compensation. And he says essentially, look, Martha Nussbaum, they were fighting the population bomb, right? They were fighting Paul Ehrlich. They were fighting.
Still 1975.
And in her mind, it's still 1975. And I think very much in Pope Francis's mind, it is still 1975.
1975.
Yes. And in so many of the internal criticisms of Harrison Butker, it is still 1975 and women are oppressed. And the revolution has come and gone. And again, we want to give the most charitable explanation for the way that the boomers acted in the 60s and 70s, because, they really sincerely thought that overpopulation was a problem. But again, they have to recognize now we have come past that. We've come through their revolution. The receipts are in, and it wasn't great. What they did was not great.
Unless you love
And,
spaceship churches and green
Now-
carpet and bad music.
and empty churches.
Right.
See, there was I don't remember who exactly said it, but one of the lefty Catholics on Twitter over the last 4 or 5 days was talking about how in this whole Harris and Butker stuff, like there seems to be a sentiment amongst younger Catholics. We can't wait for you boomer Catholics to die. This old guard, and it's like, and they're like, how could you be so lack of charity towards your elders? And I'm like, this is hilarious. An appeal to tradition. Finally, it takes you that, because of course we're rejecting the traditions of 1975 left-wing
Right.
Catholicism. Oh,
It reminds me of
we
that.
are.
Josh,
Yawn.
remember that article that NCR did, the bad NCR, about destroying that historic Vatican II article altar,
Right.
and they were just appalled. They're like, "There's so much history in this altar.
Historic.
I can't believe it." I was like, "Dude, this was built like the '70s, brother.
It
like,
was a chunk
we're
of
talking about
granite. Like, it was ugly.
altars built
old-
in like the thousands AD, and now you have like, oh, this historic Vatican II article. I can't believe they would do this. Give me a break.
Nothing makes me smile more when they appeal to tradition to save some crappy stuff from the 70s. Okay.
Oh, and then also, because this is evergreen, Erica in that Esalen article, and this is just classic. I have to bring it up every time I hear it. Butker suggested only what Chesterton suggested long ago, to the effect that modern women rose up, said they would no longer be dictated to, and promptly became stenographers.
That's so good.
Damn.
Chesterton was
Oh,
a
man.
prophet. Chesterton-
How can it be, quote, limiting, Chesterton said, to bring the universe to a child you love, but a spree of liberty to do one or two things hour after hour for bosses and strangers?
Amen.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
good.
I always found it so crazy that, like, this idea that women are slaves to their husband and family, but they're liberated if they work for corporate, overlords. It's just bizarre to me. But
This is super petty.
But when it comes to the whole discussion about this, I think people sometimes forget. It's like, in the Christian understanding of it, men are supposed to serve their wives. I mean, just like
They're
wives are
supposed to be
serve their
Christ.
husbands.
They're supposed to
Like,
get crucified for their wives.
it's just not. Yeah, I mean,
Go
it's
ahead.
like,
This is
it's
super
not like-
petty. I'm gonna sorry, I got real quick. Shout out to people who listen to What in the Dang Heck. I saw that we kind of made an appearance in their Facebook group, and Josh brought
What is
this
this
up,
you're
and it's so
talking about?
funny. So there's a podcast. It's called What in the Dang Heck, and the two ladies behind it are just super popular with kind of the 20s to 30s female demographic. I cannot believe I'm blanking on her name. She's great. I've seen her. My wife follows her stuff, all that. And someone was like, the Loopcast really nailed the Butker stuff, like pulled things right out of my mind. This is a Benedictine grad. And they're like, I especially love when Tom said that women
Yes.
are somehow liberated for this, but then slaves if they do it for
Okay.
their husband. And then they credited me for saying that. And you definitely said that. I was like, I did not say that. And
Right
you
here,
said that to me
yes.
like,
He's setting the record straight. That's very noble of you, Pogo.
yeah, I had to
That's
be honest.
classy.
Josh is much smarter and more articulate than I am, so I have to give him credit for that one. I did not say that. But shout out to anyone here.
You know what
from
I'm going to
that
do just
program.
because of that, Tom? Is I'm
Yeah.
going to start, putting up some of my quotes on Facebook and Twitter and just use your mugshot instead, and just say it's Josh Mercer. Why not?
Just make sure I sound smart and intelligent, man. Then
Justice
we
for
have a.
Pogo. That'd be good.
But
Man,
I
that
just
Mercer, he
love.
looks pretty young for 47.
Well, final thing on the Esalen article, he brought up the idea, and I haven't. This is just like such a nostalgic concept, but the idea that a childhood where houses were filled with mothers, that kids could go run around the neighborhood and be taken care of and have full houses. And now we live in a time where it's much more common for both parents to be working, there to be no one in the houses because the childhood is institutionalized, was the term he used exactly. Which I was like, wow, like what is the effect of institutionalizing childcare or people's childhoods? And
we call it in our house.
so
We call
powerful.
it the suburban wasteland because every Monday morning by 8 a.m. our neighborhood is empty. There's no one here
A
but
ghost
me
town,
and my
right?
that's
children.
crazy.
And it's very strange to think that it's hard for me to imagine a culture in which you had a neighborhood that was full of children all day long. And I would highly recommend anyone who wants to look into the effects of kids on kids of having multiple siblings, large families, and other kids around. Catherine Pakalik's book, Hannah's Children, I just finished it last night. It was so good. It's about women defying the birth dearth, having more than 5 children, most of them professionals. But it was a great insight into the importance of having small children around to a culture, to the adults, and to the other children. So check that out as well. Want to plug Catherine.
And it also, by the way, it was easier to do this sort of free range child rearing back then, because as you say, Tom, you could let your kids run loose in the neighborhood, and if something really went bad, you get a phone call, you'd hear about it. It's not a big deal, you know, you could deal with it then. And you also had more moms, you know, in the neighborhoods kind of keeping, an eye on things, and like, wait, what is that dude in that car? That guy looks creepy, you know, and they find out what's going on. So there would be a lot more, you know, just overall protection, better living. And again, this is where I make another case for, you know, Tim Carney's book, Family Unfriendly. I really think Catholics need to pick up this book, because he goes into a lot of this kind of stuff and explains how there's a better way, you know, for
Tim Carney's going to need to start paying for ads.
Yeah, he needs to start.
He needs to start. Tim, come on, man. You are getting so much free press from the Loopcast. Great guy, but Josh, dude, we got to start charging. We need some money for these kind of plugs.
Hey, and I know we're up against time. But we had a Pentecost party last night, and we invited like all the parish, all the homeschool families, and actually we're way beyond homeschool families now. It's just like everybody. And it was so fun. We had about 68 kids under the age of 18, and you know, like 7 nursing infants. And it was great to just look out at our yard and see all these kids, and like the babies are being passed around by the teenagers, and they're playing cornhole and spike ball and holding babies in their arms while they're doing it. And I was like, this is just super natural feeling too. And it's hard to take anything too seriously, like out in the world, when like this wonderful group of the next generation are out in your front yard. So highly recommend a large party to everybody with kids.
Josh, we got a speed Twilight Zone here, so you were up now.
Oh, this one's easy. Justice Samuel Alito dumped Bud Light stock during the whole controversy, and because these justices have to do reports on what they own and all their assets, so he had less than $15,000 in Anheuser-Busch stock. And he dumped it last summer during the height of the boycott. And boy, the New Republic is like, this is kind of suspicious. Has suspicious timing, and when he sold his stock. It's like, wait, the stock is in the dumper. So like, if he sold it, it's not like he's getting untoward influence from like what is there any corruption? No, but that's not what they're saying. He's like, well, wait a minute, he might have been participating in the boycott. Yeah, guess what? So what? Good for him.
It does feel like there's maybe bigger fish to fry on the stock front. Is there anyone
Are you kidding me? Yeah, Nancy Pelosi? What? Anyone? Hello.
Gosh, Nancy Pelosi, man. Imagine going to
anything that they can find, any way to find any attack against the conservative justices in the Supreme Court. Nothing is too petty for the left.
Imagine going all the way to England just to get smacked in a debate by the former banjo player of Mumford & Sons. Couldn't be me. He's sick, though. Go check out Winston Marshall. Actually, he has a sweet talk show. I was looking into him. He's a really smart guy. Anyway, my Twilight Zone, I'll keep it quick. So the Kansas City Star is the local communist outfit over there in Kansas City. It's kind of crazy to me how
Kansas City Star
communist a lot of local newspapers are in cities. We definitely did this here in Indianapolis. The Indianapolis Star is horrible as well. And so someone wrote a guest commentary at the KC Star, who notably not a big fan of the Harrison Butker speech. Let's put it that way. And here's the headline: the KC Chiefs should fire Harrison Butker and hire someone who kicks like a girl. Opinion. Now, I thought that maybe they were being funny, like this was satire somehow, because picture they used was, who can forget Sarah Fuller kicking for Vanderbilt against Missouri in November 2020. I believe she was the first female to kick in a football game. Now,
in like a D1 college football game.
If people remember this kick, it went like 20 yards. Like, I went and found the kick, and it was a horrible kick. And even the Vanderbilt people were kind of like, this was bad, but we all have to clap because progressivism, I guess.
It's a girl, yeah.
And so, yeah, this was my favorite part of this article was
Embarrassing.
for poetic justice after Harrison Butker's Neanderthal outburst, and because the pipeline of talent is real, the Kansas City Chiefs' next kicker should be a woman. This is not a joke. It's not unrealistic, and it would be good for business. Just ask the University of Manitoba how ticket sales were last year. All the kickers they used are from like D3 NAIA schools as like they're somehow in this big powerhouse program and they're going to be next. First, I would love to see a woman kick a 60-plus yard field goal in like cold conditions with 300, 400-pound people coming at them as fast as they possibly can.
Not happening.
I would love to see it. It's not going to happen. But just the thought that like someone would see this situation and be like, it's so Neanderthal, knuckle dragging, and backwards to praise your wife for bearing your children and embracing a role as a mother and a caretaker, homemaker to create that space for her kids, which wouldn't have been controversial if said 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And the solution of said problem, because progressivism, is to insert women to kick this problem. I was like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, I saw the kick that they used. It wasn't good. There's no way it's happening. They would rather.
What was that place, though, you said that had all the female kickers?
Manitoba, I guess.
Did they make it to the Super Bowl?
No.
No.
They're not even in the NFL.
Oh, they're
You're
not.
taking
Oh, crazy.
Sarah Fuller for Vanderbilt.
Here's my point. Like, if the Kansas City Chiefs are being dunderheads, like, there's what, 31 other football teams in the NFL? Surely they could take this Vanderbilt kicker and they could destroy the Chiefs, right? That'd be simple.
guess,
Obviously, somebody's stupid for not doing it already. Like, who lost to Kansas City? Didn't the Buffalo Bills lose to Kansas City, and they could have had the chance to go into the Super Bowl instead of the Chiefs? Yeah, maybe the Bills should give this Vanderbilt person a call.
Yeah. The idea that their solution to him saying something completely normal is saying something insane and communist, like, I would just love to see the natural end of that. They actually, you know what? If Harrison Butker would have said, hey, I'm transitioning to a female, I'm going to go kick for a women's team. I'm going to go play in the women's soccer league and dominate. They would have been, this is heroic and brave. Now we're talking, guys. So, yeah, Kansas City Star, you're communists, and stop doxing our boy. I despise you. All right. That does it for this show. If you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. That's where you can do that. Support the show. Like, subscribe. Appreciate that. Stop laughing at me, Josh. I'm doing well this time. If you would like to join the Champions Club, loopcast.org is where you can do so. It's the only way we're able to do what we do. Thank you to everyone who joined in the live chat. If you'd like to be there, we're on YouTube at 11, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we got a great show lined up for you Wednesday, but the best thing you can do for us is pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Fidelis, pray for us, and we'll see you guys then. Peace.